So then the safety car comes in, and Verstappen does a really late acceleration to get going again, to restart the race. And it catches Norris slightly out. It's always easier at this point for the driver that's in third to react than the guy in second. They can look at the race leader the same as the driver in second, and it's much harder for him to go with the race leader than it is the guy in third. And it means that Perez puts Norris under pressure. Now, side by side into turn one, Norris on the inside, and he holds off. Perez runs wide, and we get the battle going all the way now for the first half of the lap. Norris covers it off up towards turn three on the inside, but that's going to make him now vulnerable on the exit. DRS zone not in use at this stage, but even then, Perez is very close. And here we go, down towards turn four, and he's ahead a little bit coming into the corner. But Lando's got the inside, and he brakes late. And as we get to the apex, they're pretty much side by side. If anything, Lando's maybe got his nose just marginally in front at this point, but they've both gone in very hot. Lando's full lock at the steering wheel. You can see there, he's just turning hard now, and they've both gone in really hot. You still see Perez right side by side the whole way through here. And as we play it through, now Lando starts to release as we're getting towards the exit curve, but Perez is already finding himself in the gravel at this point. Quite clearly, there is no space for a Formula One car on the exit, on the outside of Lando Norris here. So Lando carries on, and Perez is the one that drops right to the edge of the points with this one. On board with Checo, and you can see it's all looking okay at this point, but they've gone in really deep, the two of them. They're pretty well committed, and now Perez is just being ushered immediately to the gravel. Already at this point, even though there's some space, I'm sure he'd be worried about the gravel coming up quickly because they're in hot, and because there's just no space for Perez to be turning any more to the right. He can't do anything about this. So he keeps his foot in, and now he's in big trouble. Out towards the gravel, and in he goes. Could he have been a little bit more cautious at that point, stayed in third, and waited a little bit more time in the Grand Prix to try and pick off Lando and get that Red Bull up into second place? We know the pace of the Red Bull was very good, but maybe Perez just rushed this one a little bit, went for a big, brave move, and it didn't pay off for him. But Lando Norris earned himself a 5-second penalty with it. And this one is a very dubious penalty, I have to say. It's a difficult one because there's a couple of sides to it. There's the actual ruling, and then there's the application of the ruling. That are two different sides here, I think. According to the ruling, no doubt, there was no space for Perez on the outside, so Norris did force another driver off. But we haven't seen that penalty be given for 2 years. It's been 2 years. And this incident 2 years ago at the same circuit, I think was quite defining in telling the drivers how they can race. Let's watch it. Max Verstappen on board, chasing down Charles Leclerc for the lead of the race, and this is the race win in the dying laps. Verstappen goes for the inside, and you can see Leclerc's ahead in the braking zone. But as we get through, side by side, and now they are wheel to wheel. This is very similar position now to Norris on the inside, Perez on the outside. It's the corner before, but it's exactly the same circumstances. Wheel to wheel, you can see Verstappen's got the lock on, he releases it slightly. He's actually getting on the throttle at this point, slightly just to force himself out. He knows exactly what he's doing, sending Leclerc more deliberately than Norris out wide. And bam, they even touch wheels, and Verstappen forces his rival off, comes through, takes the win. It was investigated afterwards with the stewards, that one. But Verstappen kept the win. They said that was absolutely fine. And to me, I can't see the difference between what Norris did and what Verstappen did here. And it's not just that race 2 years ago, but it's so many races in between that we've had a case of someone on the inside just pushing the driver on the outside off. It's almost every race. When there's wheel-to-wheel action, there's some level of this. And we could see a couple of races ago. This is this season. This is Norris himself being forced off by Pierre Gasly at the French Grand Prix, Paul Ricard. Norris goes for a really brave move here around the outside of Beausset. Quick right-hander, long right-hander. He was well ahead, and now Gasly just launches it back up on the inside. Norris almost collides with him, ends up getting forced wide. He's backed off a little bit, so he's not quite up in that position where he would be completely alongside Gasly. But even so, Gasly's momentum and the line that he's on has forced Norris wide, and they both go wide. But look how far off Gasly is. Gasly's gone so wide to try and block this. Norris has been forced off the track as well, trying to avoid it. And this one was absolutely fine. There we go, Norris just cannot keep on the track because Gasly's just sent it up the inside. We watch again. Now look at that. Gasly's quite a long way behind Lando at this point, and he just sends it up the inside with absolutely no regard, Pierre here, for whether Norris is going to stay on the track or not on the exit. He just sends it. If Norris stays on the outside of him, he's out onto the abrasive tarmac out on the outside here. Gasly in the end ends up pretty much on there himself, and Norris ends up wide because Gasly's forced him out there even though he's backed off. And that one, there's differences between them all. Actually, the Verstappen-Leclerc one from 2 years ago is very similar, but this sort of thing we see all the time, and this is the Portuguese Grand Prix now. Hamilton passes Max Verstappen back into turn one. These two had a terrific scrap throughout the Grand Prix, and Verstappen tries to get back at Lewis Hamilton in towards turn three here. They're side by side. Verstappen on the outside, Hamilton on the inside. Maybe Max is slightly a nose behind Lewis Hamilton, but then look, as we go through from the apex, Max is chancing it here, and Lewis is right out on the curb. Absolutely no chance that Max can stay on the track. He's forced off the road. Again, nothing doing, and no one was asking for a penalty here from Hamilton, because that's sort of deemed as fair racing, really. Verstappen was a bit behind. Hamilton was on the inside, and he just chose his line and forced Verstappen off. But no doubt, he forced a rival off the circuit. Even if we look back to this Norris and Perez clip here on the restart, watch this first corner. Norris defends from Perez. We see the Red Bull man come through on the outside. He's fractionally ahead into turn one. And as we play it through, Norris takes the apex, and Checo there is obviously forced off the road over the curb and back on the asphalt. Now, quite clearly, the difference between all of these incidents is what's on the outside. It's the gravel that's the issue here. Norris, when he was forced wide in France, was fine. He managed to get the place back on Gasly the next lap. Perez here has been forced off, but he's still side by side. In fact, he's slightly ahead, but he's not going to keep it. But there's no harm done, really. Hamilton and Verstappen, sort of fine. Hamilton had the advantage. Verstappen tried it around the outside. It was a bit ambitious, and Hamilton forced him off and kept the position. Even with Verstappen and Leclerc, it was for the race win. It was deciding, but Leclerc joined again in second place, and Verstappen won. For Norris and Perez went through the gravel and dropped from the fight from second down towards the edge of the top 10. It was more dramatic, but actually the offence was no different to so many that we've seen in the past. And that's where I think, by the letter of the law, I think the stewards made the right decision to penalise Lando because he forced another driver off the road. But we've not seen that letter of the law applied for 2 years now, where drivers have been so often on the inside, able to force their rival off, and the stewards sometimes are never even looking at it, and other times they're just saying, that's okay, that's how we race. It's difficult then for Norris. I don't think, given all of that, given where we've been for the last couple of years, that Norris should have been penalised, because that's what's been let go so many times. But this time in Austria, suddenly he was penalised for it. So it's the inconsistency that's always the problem. The drivers don't really know what they can and can't get away with. There's nothing in the rules that says if there's tarmac runoff on the outside, you can force someone off there, but if there's gravel, you can't. That's not in the rules. That's someone's interpretation of the rules, and they've called it on the fly, and it just feels a little bit harsh for someone that's driven in the same manner. And in fact, both Red Bull and McLaren bosses thought that Lando shouldn't have been penalised in this case. In the grand scheme of things, I think penalties are fine in this instance because we want to see drivers running side by side. And this Perez and Leclerc battle sort of shows why we need drivers to respect each other and give space on the outside. You've got Leclerc twice trying to pass Perez. Both times Perez goes to the inside, and as Leclerc's coming through, he just takes him off the road. It's clearly not fair racing, and it's also not good racing. Some people say it's hard racing, let them race, this is what we want. But actually, I don't think it is really what we want. This is someone on the inside just making sure they're not overtaken by forcing them into the gravel or off the road whenever they get the chance to be overtaken. And Perez probably won't be overtaken in this Grand Prix if every time he covers the inside and he won't let the driver pass him on the outside. But that's the racing we want. We want to see racing that goes on for more than just one corner. We don't want to see a mad dash to the inside and then force your rival off because that's in the rules. And that's what the stewards penalised kind of fairly this time, but we want to see the consistency. So there needs to be a reset, and hopefully the drivers will know where they stand moving forward. So that was a look at some contentious moments between Norris and Perez, then Perez and Leclerc, which all gave a bit of a headache to the stewards. But there was so much more action in this Grand Prix as well. We're going to look at Esteban Ocon, what happened to him on the first lap, what happened to Kimi Raikkonen on the last lap, Yuki Tsunoda getting some strange penalties, and what happened to Lewis Hamilton after all that. For more of that, check it out on F1 TV.